این پنل در واقع دیجیتال اینفراستراکچر و IXP رو شروع بکنیم. من خیر مقدم میگم خدمت جناب آقای دکتر شرافت، مشاور ارشد جناب آقای وزیر ارتباطات آقای جهرومی و عضو هیئت مدیره شرکت توسعه زیرساخت تشریف آوردن که در پنلمون در خدمتشون باشیم. دعوت میکنم که جناب آقای دکتر شرافت، آقای دکتر اکبری از زیرساخت، داوید from UCOM, Nurbek from State Agency of Telecommunication from Kazakhstan, Mr. Riazi, Abbas Riazi from GBI, and Bulendson from DECIX to join our panel. خیلی خوش آمدید آقای دکتر. تست. خب همونطور که خدمتتون عرض کردم، ما در واقع میخوایم تو پنلمون در مورد IXP و تبادل ترافیک در کشورهای منطقه تو میدل ایست صحبت بکنیم. به خاطر همین سعی کردیم از کسانی دعوت بکنیم که در واقع تو این حوزه فعالیت داشتن. از قبل شرکت یوکام که در واقع جزو پرووایدرهای شرکت توسعه زیرساخت هست، GBI همینطور و دکیکس هم که جزو IXP های بین المللی محسوب میشه. I will continue in English. I have set up some questions from our guests. First of all, I will start with DECIX. I want to know that Bülent, you are coming from Turkey. First of all, please tell us how much international traffic you have in Turkey and how much traffic you are doing transit from other countries to, I mean, west or east. First of all, we will start with this question. Thank you.
بتونه حرف من بشنوه، من صدای خودم میفهمم. سوال ممنون. ترافیکی که تقریبا ما داریم 15 ترابیت یک پنج 15 ترابیت این تقسیم میشه به دو تا اپراتور اصلی، توک تلکام و توکسل. ترافیک ترانزیت دقیق ارقام ندارم چون اطلاعات عمومی نیست، ولی تخمین
3 terabit of transiting traffic. So this is traffic from most probably Iran, Iraq, and some other Middle Eastern countries that transit Turkey.
How much from that 15 gigabit of terabit per second traffic is going through IXPs, and do you have any? I mean,
well, as I told you, in Turkey we currently only have 60 gig of traffic that is on the exchange platform.
But your service providers, I think, join to international IXPs.
Yes, they also join international IXPs. Some of them also joined DECIX in Frankfurt. So they have some traffic there. So I don't know the exact figures, how much they spend, how much of that 15 terabit of traffic is exactly going to all these IXPs. But we know that the total traffic that leaves Turkey is about 15 terabit.
May I ask this question from you, Mr. Riazi? Do you have any statistic from GBI that how much traffic they are doing transit in, I mean, south? And how much traffic you think United Arab Emirates or Qatar contains right now?
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I'm very glad to be here in front of talented engineers. GBI is one of the submarine cable operator in the south of Iran, especially in Oman Sea and Persian Gulf. We connected Southeast Asia to south of Iran, GCC countries, and also in the south of Europe through Suez Channel. Actually, the total traffic in region is around 15 terabit per second, and GBI has 20% of it. About the transit, it must be around 800, and 300 of the transit will go through Iran, from south of Iran to north, in two border, Bazargan and also Norduz. Actually, we plan to increase this amount of transit from 300 to 1.1 terabit in 2018, and most of these traffics must be come from India, as we recently signed a contract with Airtel, the giant mobile operator of India. So this is a summary of what we done in 2018.
Okay, I want to ask this question from you, David. Would you please tell me that how much traffic right now you have in UCOM? Do you have any cache or CDN in your network or not? How much of that traffic you are, doing transit is serving by your cache locally?
Actually, at this moment, we have 4 caches, big ones. Like Google, Facebook, Akamai, Cloudflare. And of course, from these caches, we are transiting traffics to the Middle Asia and then the Middle East region. So transit traffics approximately is about 1.5 terabits. And UCOM is one of the, let's say, main leaders of this market, transit markets to this region. And number one by sold capacities to the places where we are providing services, transiting.
Do you have any statistic from Armenia? How much international traffic Armenia itself has?
It is, as you know, Armenia is not a big country with not a big population. Approximate usage of internet is about 200-250 gigabits. It's approximate, out of which around 90% is international traffic.
90%.
Yeah.
Do you have any local IXP in Armenia?
Yeah, we have a local IXP, Armix. Yeah, and then with...
Is there any international IXP there too?
We are a member of European IX. Yeah. And then the members of Armix are 13.
How much traffic you have in Armix?
It's about 15 to 20 gigabits. Yeah.
So it does not have that much of traffic?
Yeah, not that much. As I said, 90% is international traffic.
Okay, I want to ask Dr. Akbari to give some statistics regarding TIC to members are attending this meeting. Maybe they don't know how much international traffic TIC has right now, how much traffic is transiting from south to north or vice versa. Would you please give them? Thank you.
In the name of God. In TIC we have more than 1.4 terabit per second international traffic, and also more than 500 gigabit per second transit traffic. And also for IXP more than 250 gigabits per second in Tehran IX.
So you're talking about our local IX, Tehran IX?
Yes, yes.
250?
250.
Gigabit per second.
Yes.
And do you have any foreign cache in your CDN, in your IXP too?
No.
You don't have?
We don't have. Caching in IXP. We don't have any caching in IXP.
Yeah, content provider. Would you please tell me that, have you measured that the traffic you are transiting coming from which countries mostly? And you are transiting what?
Most of the transit traffic traversing in TIC network is in transmission layer. In transmission layer, most of the origin of transit traffic from Qatar, Iraq, and also Afghanistan.
Okay, Afghanistan. Thank you. Nurbek, would you please give some statistics from Kazakhstan?
Kyrgyz Republic.
Yeah.
Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan.
Yes.
Sorry.
In our country, we have about 200 gigabits of internet traffic, and about 120 is internal consumption, and about 80 gigabits is transit traffic. And we transit to Tajikistan and Afghanistan. And in our country, we have internet exchange point based on association of communication operators. It's about 40 gigabits.
14.
40.
40.
40.
Is your IXP belongs to governmental sector or it's private one?
It's non-commercial. It's association of network operators.
Network operators. Do you have any cache in your IXP regarding
No.
Google and Facebook?
No. We have Google cache at ISP, Internet Service Providers. About 6 ISP have their own Google caches.
Your internet service providers directly connected to IP transit providers, or is there any upstream provider in your country?
Sorry?
Is there any upstream provider in your country or tier one, or the ISPs are directly connected? Directly connected. Yes. Dr. Sharafat, would you please ask some questions from, our guests to, know that what are the challenges we have in the Middle East or region regarding the IP transit and how we can make it efficient. As you know, lots of traffic is going through Egypt right now, and the traffic is not coming through Iran or even Iraq or other countries in, Middle East. Would you please tell us what are the problems in this, case? Thank you.
Before I start, could I ask the audience how many people do not speak Farsi? Do not. Because I was going to speak in Farsi, but if, and basically what I was going to say is addressed to the Iranian audience. So, but nevertheless, I think I can continue in English. I think the transit service is a very complex and at the same time very dynamic situation. Up to very recent times, the majority of traffic from Southeast Asia was passing through Egypt. And my estimates are that maybe around 20 terabits per second of traffic is passing through Egypt. And everybody knows that the number of submarine cables going through the Red Sea and passing through Egypt, both via terrestrial links in Egypt and also via Suez Canal. The total current capacity is about 20 terabits per second. Now, this I think is an update statistics. We have started to provide transit service from south to north. I think it's more than a year that we started to provide this service. And the current contracted capacity is in excess of 300, maybe 400 gigabits per second. When we started to provide this service, everybody has, to some extent, unrealistic expectations. You may know that we have an obligation to increase the transit traffic to 30 terabits per second within 4 years. Now, considering that all traffic from east to west is about 20 terabits per second, that seemed to be a very unrealistic objective. We cannot do anything about this unrealistic objective. What we have to do is to try our best to get as close to this number as possible. But the situation, as I said, is very dynamic and very complex. Since Egyptian authorities realized that we are a serious player in transiting traffic, they have started to reduce their rates. And so what was their exclusive domain until recently, and with the entry of Iran into this provision of transit service, they felt very threatened, and as such they have reduced their costs. So we are in a very difficult situation. And I think this is a very good lesson. It is a good or bad lesson, I don't know, but this is a very real lesson for all those who want to be engaged in this theoretically lucrative market. It doesn't seem to be lucrative anymore. It doesn't seem to be attractive anymore. Every year we are expecting a 30% erosion of the costs. So what some people had in their business plan a few years ago do not seem to be realistic anymore. And so that requires a quick readjustment of the business plans. If the question to me is, what is my expectation of the transit traffic passing through Iran, is something, I would say maybe around 2 terabits per second to 5 terabits per second. That's something that I hope we would be able to achieve within a year and a half. Beyond that, I do not think it would be realistic. And to add to the complexities of the current situation, one need to mention that there are a number of players which are having unrealistic view of the business. We have not only TIC as the backbone network provider in Iran, but there are other players. Rail services have put into place a parallel network for transiting traffic. Tawanir, as the power provider of services, has for some time have their own fiber optic networks, and they expect us to open the market without realizing that opening the market would bring down the revenue for everybody. And that would be a cutthroat situation. We have so far been able to, one way or the other, manage the situation. But I think we need to sit down and talk in realistic terms and bring everybody to the ground from the clouds. Nothing is better than a realistic appraisal and assumption of the situation. So I think while we hope that the transit traffic would be increasing, I think we also have to anticipate that the revenue from transit traffic would not go proportionate to the increase in traffic. So there is a need, a serious need, to sit down and reevaluate the projections and the business models and to see what can be done. In other countries, I have witnessed that when there are multiple players, this multiplicity has been played by outside players to bring their cost down to the bare minimum. And many have been put out of business. I think we need to be very careful on this. And my humble suggestion and recommendation to our to other stakeholders in Iran is try to be as realistic as possible, and we have to avoid a seesawing, a cutthroat approach in providing transit traffic. That's point one. Point two is that the need for transit traffic, not only the revenues are reducing, but the need for transit traffic is also reducing. During capacity in Dubai, I had a lengthy discussion with our colleagues in Etisalat, and I asked them about what is the capacity of their consumption, internet consumption. And I was very much surprised to see that their international traffic has significantly reduced. And that is because of the putting into place local content. What they were accessing from outside, now they have managed to bring in. And that is another dimension that we also have to take into account. The only positive element that we can play is that when there are disruptions in submarine cables, it takes at least 2 to 3 weeks, if not more, to repair the cable and restore the service. Whereas we have been advertising and telling all interested parties that with terrestrial networks we can repair any disruptive network within hours. And so that is another dimension that we have to take into account. Finally, I think much has been said about a better quality of service in terms of lower latency and smaller jitter values. But those are very marginal, and I think people are not willing and ready to pay a huge premium price for such maybe minimal advantages. So I wanted to come to your meeting and share with you some of these thoughts with the hope that we need to be playing based on realistic assumptions. We need to be vigilant. We need to realize that the competition is actually playing up. With the situation in Syria, there is another big player coming up because the situation in Syria is calming down, and there is a big potential that that the terrestrial international cable passing from Saudi to Iraq to Syria to Jordan onwards would become operational sooner or later, and that adds another dimension of competitiveness. So these are some of the points that I wanted to mention and tell you that the future is hopeful, but at the same time difficult, and we have to fight for each bits per second if we want to get it. We have to improve our efficiencies. We have to reduce our costs. Otherwise, there would not be any real perspective of becoming a real, serious player in providing transit traffic. I know that some of the stakeholders have invested heavily, have put together a significant number of technical people in place, but it is very alarming that such costs cannot be recovered. And in that regard, we need to be very vigilant. TIC's services in transit, part of it is from south to north and north to south. But part of it is also to our neighboring countries. We are very active in promoting our transit services to our neighboring countries. And we have been partnering with important players in our neighboring countries. UCOM is one of them. GBI is another one. Delta is another one. Turkcell Superline, also Turk Telecom International. We have been working with these players to provide good quality transit service to other countries in our neighborhood, namely to Afghanistan, to Turkmenistan, and to Iraq. The situation in some of these countries are also dynamically changing very rapidly. For example, the situation in Iraq is changing by the day. And we have to use every opportunity that we can in order to see what can we get from this dynamic and fast-moving situation. So we have some potentials, we have some capabilities, we have some resources, we have some infrastructure, second to none. The quality is, of course, very impressive, but that is not sufficient to get the business. We need to move and act in a way that the French president told his nation when he was when he started his term as the president of France. And that was, we need to think, work, and act as a startup nation. That is, we need to be very dynamic and be content with very small margins, with the hope that we would be able to compensate that with large volumes. So this is my message. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharafat. Nurbek, I will let you do your presentation after the panel. Bulent, would you please tell us regarding the infrastructure you have for last mile customers in Turkey? Do you have any statistic, and the majority of them, for example, you are providing, for example, in South Korea, most of the house contains 100 megabit per second, FTTH connection, and they have LTE, service provider too. Would you please tell me that what is the 15 terabit per second your international traffic contains of? What kind of customers, service providers have in Turkey?
Well, first of all, we don't have our own infrastructure in Turkey. We use the existing infrastructure. As you know, we have a couple of main players. Turk Telecom is one, it's the incumbent operator. Turkcell is the second largest ISP. Turkcell Superonline actually, because Turkcell is also the mobile operator. It's the largest mobile operator. So when you look at the statistics for that, there are some published statistics. I actually wrote down a couple of them, so I might be able to share with you if I just open up. Hold on. So there are if we look at what the mobile or the fixed line penetration is in Turkey, I read about that the fixed broadband penetration is about 11.9 million users currently in Turkey. The mobile broadband penetration is 56.9 million. So the total population is like 80 million. We have about 68.9 million mobile and fixed users, right? Which is 86% of the total population using broadband. I don't have the exact figures of how much of that is, split up by which carrier has how much. But I can tell you that the main operators are Türk Telekom, Turkcell Super Online, we have Turknet, Millenicom, Vodafone. So it's split up by those operators.
Would you please tell me that what are the, how much of the traffic is, for example, for fixed operators and how much traffic is for mobile operators? Do you have a statistic for that 1.5 million, fixed subscriber? How much traffic from those 15 terabit per second is?
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly. So.
You told that 11.5 million subscriber.
Yeah.
Fixed subscriber.
Fixed, right.
Do you know the traffic of the aggregate traffic of those fixed, subscribers, service providers who are providing fixed services?
Not exactly.
From the whole country traffic.
The whole country traffic is like
15.
15, yeah.
How much is for that one 11.5?
Okay, so I don't have those exact figures in percentages. So I can't give you the exact figures, but I can give you about how much fiber or DSL users we have, if that's... So in Q4 2017, we had about 8.7 million DSL users, right? And approximately 2.3 fiber users. And this is it's the total usage of fiber. So it's fiber to the home, fiber to the building, that total. And cable internet is about 827,000 users. So that is the penetration ratios if you look at the Turkish market.
I have a question, please.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have to leave shortly because I have other engagements.
Yeah,
if there are questions that people would like me to answer, please, I'm at your disposal. But otherwise, I need to go quickly.
Any question from Dr. Sharafat regarding TIC or ICT Ministry? Sorry. Yeah, please. Oh, you have a question?
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharafat. That gave us a clear point of view. And yes, the industry shows very competitive prices. And this is the killing competition between operators. And as you said, the latency and jitter is not enough parameter for making a decision for a foreign operator to let their traffic go through Iranian network. Actually, it's a very amazing price from the Egypt side, and recently from Iraq we have very low prices for carrying our traffic. And personally, I want to have all traffics come from south of Iran to north, and this is one of the approach that we have for making money for Iranian people. I think if I were you, I will let the private sector to take over the transit network from TIC, totally. This is because in this situation, the government itself will not lose a black penny. And the private sector has this high dynamicity to have all the arrangements with the foreign operators. All the investment will come from the private sector, and they will have good reaction with the foreign operators to carry this traffic. And also from the regulation perspective, the government can take a share of the revenue. In this situation, we will not have any lose in the government. And also this competition will go in the way that makes money for people and also the government. And in this situation, we can arrange the numbers, I mean the cost for the foreign operators that can compete with each other. And for upgrading the network, it is not necessary to have a big network. As I heard, TIC had a tender for 30 terabit per second network. It's a very big number. It is better that we start with the low amount of traffics, multiple 100 Gs, and then upgrade it. I think this is the best solution for contributing the private sector and also TIC involved with. I know that some security reasons are inside, but I think for transit network, there is no security reasons and it's possible to have cooperation with TIC.
Of course, what do you expect the private sector to promote the private sector? And to ask the public sector to totally vacate all the opportunities to the private sector. We would love to do that, but the situation is more complex than is seen from outside. First and foremost, I have to emphasize that we are not designing a network with 30 terabits per second of transit capacity and then let it sit idle for years. We are not doing that. We have designed our network in such a way to be very dynamic, to increase the capacity as we go and move along the way. So in order to reduce our capital expenditure. As to becoming or making the private sector a serious player in this, yes, we are realizing the potentials of the private sector, and we would definitely, as I have indicated to Dr. Riazi on previous occasions, we are very interested to benefit from the potentials and capabilities of the private sector. But at the same time, I think we need to realize other dimensions. One is to avoid cut-throating competition between different players. There are already other stakeholders that have invested heavily, and I don't want to include in those other stakeholders TIC, because we have other missions as well. But what do you want to do with the others? Do you want to ask the railroad to go away, or the power company to dismantle their fiber optic network that were designed originally for carrying transit traffic? I think we need to be realistic. We have to bring all stakeholders together and devise a dynamic, smart mechanism to get as many stakeholders and players involved as possible, but at the same time to maximize and optimize the benefits and the outcomes of such undertakings. Again, I want to emphasize that in the public sector, in TIC, we are very concerned about cost-saving measures. We have transformed TIC on such levels that require vigilant, careful examination of all cost elements in order to minimize them, and at the same time to maximize the potential financial benefits to the country. So with this, yes, I realize that there are potentials in the private sector, and we will continue to engage in a very constructive, positive manner with private sector, but at the same time we have to realize that some other entities have other concerns that we have to be very careful about satisfying their concerns as well.
Thank you, Dr. Sharafat.
Can I leave now?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, before going, to the presentation of Norbek, I want to ask Dr. Akbari, would you please let us know regarding the international connectivity of TIC to DECIX and how much the capacity is right now, how much you want to extend it, how many peerings you are doing right now in DECIX, and what is the TIC plan for, international peering?
At this situation, we have peering with DECIX, I think more than about 200 gigabit per second,
Yeah.
200 gigabit per second capacity to the DECIX pop point in Frankfurt. And in our plan to extend this capacity from various paths, including from Istanbul pop, and it's in our plan. It's our plan to expanding our capacity for connecting to the DECIX in 2 points.
Bulent, would you please tell me that how many members you have in DECIX Frankfurt, and how much of those members are connected to root server? No need to doing bilateral peering. We can get the traffic with the multilateral peering with root server.
Yes, of course. We have over 800 plus members connected. All the open networks, which you can check on the website, because I don't know how many exactly open networks we have. These are all connected to the root server. In Istanbul, we have 30 networks connected.
I think we have 75% of DECIX.
At least,
I searched in your list. 75% were open.
Yes, so that would be the number that is directly connected to the root server.
And what kind of content providers right now connected to DECIX? Like Google, would you please name some of, popular one?
Well, here in Istanbul or
Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt. Well, all the main names that you can think of, Akamai, Google, Facebook, whatever you think of, all of these content providers are all connected to the DECIX platform in Frankfurt.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Riazi, how much traffic right now GBI totally contains?
As 20% of 15 terabits, it means 3 terabits.
3 terabits. And all of it passing through Qatar?
No, Qatar and Dubai, two main land stations of GBI. So it divides in 2 land stations. Half Qatar, half Dubai.
Okay, thank you. I need some help for asking questions from, TIC guys and GBI, DECIX, UCOM. If you have any question, would you please? Babak, do you want to join us in the panel?
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the insights. Actually, we've been running some experiments to measure the connectivity from Iranian network towards some major service providers, and we noticed that we have great connectivity through the DECIX peering, And I was wondering why, because TIC has a selective peering policy on DKIX, and some of the major networks like Google are not included on that route. And I was wondering if there is any capacity limits maybe on that path. So I heard we have like 200G capacity. So why some major networks and DKIX are not included on your peerings? I can give you an example. For example, Google, we don't have, seems like TIC has no peering through DKIX with Google. So actually, during our experiments, we figured out that our reachability to public DNS server for Google, Quad 8, is not as good as the other public servers.
Have you measured this issue?
You have measured it.
Yeah, actually we measured this. We were running this experiment to measure the quality of service we are getting from different public resolvers. For example, from Cloudflare public DNS, we are getting a very good service quality, and we noticed that the traffic is routing through DKIX. But we had some connectivity issues with Google public DNS, and we noticed that it's routing through different routes. So why we don't have any peering with Google or some other major service providers through DKIX?
It's better answered by Mr. Wahabzadeh.
Yeah, let me answer your question because I was involved in the DKIX project. The capacity problem was the major problem to do not peer with everyone. 200 gigabit per second right now is congest because TIC has a good peering with Facebook regarding the Instagram traffic, and just only 4 or 5 members of DKIX right now peered with TIC. Cloudflare is one of them. Gaming service providers like Valve and I don't know, I forgot their names. Blizzard, Cloudflare, Blizzard, Valve, Facebook.
Riot Games, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. They right now have direct peering. After the capacity expansion from 200 to 400, they want to do open peering with the root server. When they do the peering with the root server, Google is right now active. Google has open policy in DKIX, so they will get the Google routes from root server.
Thank you very much we are looking forward to see that expansion happen very soon.
Yeah, but TIC has started a project to do peering in Armenia. UCOM has cache from Google and from Cloudflare too, so you will get the Google and Cloudflare traffic from Armenia too.
And thank you for explaining.
You're welcome. Oh yeah. Would you please tell us that GBI contains what kind of content providers?
Actually, we have direct access to Google, Amazon AWS, and also Microsoft Azure in our data center in Qatar. So if we can provide the IP service to TIC, it is possible that we provide these services as well.
Okay, thank you. We have another question, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Gohar Malman from the Center of Strategic Initiatives of the Government of Armenia. Thank you for all the very important messages and insights that you shared with us. And I would like to hear from any one of you who would like to elaborate on actually regional cooperation opportunities. That is, we are maybe talking about different country strategies to become regional hubs in traffic transfer. Our country as well, Armenia, is working on its strategy to become a regional hub, right? But what about creating regional traffic routes? And we know that a lot is happening in different countries that you are actually representing. And to create a regional traffic route to connect Middle East and Central Asia. How do you see the states' roles to collaborate and to invest in projects of this scale? Can you share something from your plans, from your country plans, please?
Actually, we gave our proposal to TIC, especially Dr. Sharafat. that we want to connect Southeast Asia to Europe through Iran. We have the submarine cable in the south of Iran, if possible, participate in TIC network, and also has the acquisition from networks from Armenia, Georgia, and connect ourselves to Sofia. So in this situation, we have Iranian fiber optic cables from Southeast Asia to Europe. This is our proposal, and the TIC must study and give us a response about this. If it's possible to do that, so every country that participating in the fiber optic cable can contribute in the business. Okay.
This question is very actual. I think appearance of big hub in this region is just question of time, and because day-to-day need of IP traffic is increasing and speeds are also increasing a lot. So in this region, I believe that soon we will have a big hub like in Hong Kong, in Frankfurt, which will serve all these region countries with the best quality service, because in this case, all main Tier 1 companies and content providers, etc., will be interested and for sure will bring all their equipment and content here. And with this, the question of latency, RTT, etc., will be, let's say, almost solved, because with in this case, distance will be such small that quality will be like perfect. So yes, I believe that very soon we will have somewhere in this region big hub. The only question, when and where.
May I add something to this, to David? Thank you for your question. During my introduction this morning, I already mentioned about certain things. What we see, I mean, if you look at the current situation, if you look at Frankfurt, DKIX currently is the largest internet exchange point in the world. We have almost 7 terabit of traffic passing through our exchange. When you look into this region, and you look especially also to the Middle Eastern region, you see that, in general, in this region, you see that most of the traffic is all going to Frankfurt and is getting exchanged over there. So this was one of the main reasons why DKIX decided also to get more to the Middle Eastern region, put a POP in Istanbul. We also have a POP in Dubai. But what we see in Dubai, for example, is that, yes, we have nearly, I think, about 100 networks connected there and about 80 gigs of traffic. But what we see is that that traffic is all concentrated there. Dubai is not yet connected to any other POP of DKIX, any place else. So basically you have an island where all the networks are connected, and it's called an internet-free zone. So they're all connected there. They can exchange traffic in the internet-free zone, but whenever someone wants to take the traffic out, you can only go out either by Etisalat, correct me if I'm wrong, or via DO. So these are the 2 main operators that can get the traffic into the country. Now, the main reason that we put a POP also in Istanbul is that we are seeing that all this traffic is bypassing all the way back to Frankfurt, which is causing a lot of latency. It's a cost issue, because it will cost you money to get there and to get the traffic back to the country. And it's also a security issue that brings that along. So what we saw is that we should take some action on that. That's why we put in a DKIX POP also in Istanbul. Now, DKIX Istanbul is connected to Frankfurt, so we can get access to the networks in Frankfurt. The next step is actually to get as much as possible content into Turkey. like Google, Facebook. Akamai is already there. AWS is in Turkey already. Microsoft is in Turkey, but they haven't got their servers in Turkey yet. So the traffic is still going back and forward. So the next step is to get as much as possible content into Turkey, so it keeps the content, the regional content local, and it's easy to access from all the neighboring countries, because from Armenia, all the neighboring countries, all this traffic goes, not to Turkey, it goes all the way to Frankfurt. So this is what we're looking at. And when we complete this, I mean, this is the step to a regional hub. After that, we are thinking of connecting Dubai to Istanbul as well. We have a new setup hub in Mumbai, in India, which is very important for the Asian traffic. So imagine that we can connect all these points together, all these dots together, then you will have a distributed IX setup covering a couple of continents, and you will have actually the hub idea that you're looking at. But as we know, it takes some time. It's not like we announce it today and tomorrow it happens. There are restrictions in certain countries, there are regulations in certain, also in Turkey we have these regulations and restrictions. So these are the challenges that we are facing. Infrastructure is still a very, very expensive thing to get connected, because this is the challenge that I'm facing, for example, in Turkey. Normally, when you look in Europe, if you're an IX, you just have to say, I'm here, and then everybody connects to you, because infrastructure is cheap, it's easy, it's accessible for everyone. But when you look into a country like Turkey, we are the IX. We are the only official registered IX in Turkey currently. But when we say to people, come connect, it's not that easy to connect because it's expensive. Just to give you an example, it's cheaper to connect from Istanbul to Frankfurt than it is from Istanbul to Istanbul. Yeah? I mean, if you look at the price, just to give you an indication, if you want to connect 10G connectivity from Istanbul to Frankfurt, it will cost you about 6,000 to 7,000 euros a month. If you want to connect 1G in Istanbul to another point of location in Istanbul, you're facing a 10G connection from Istanbul to Istanbul, you're facing like 20,000 euros a month, which doesn't sound logic, but it's the current situation. Yeah? I hope that helps with your...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nishal?
Hi there. Hello, Nishal Gurbadan, Packet Clearinghouse. I have a few questions. I'm not sure who would want to answer them. And a few comments as well. The first is, I'm actually not a network engineer or anything like that. I apologize if I gave you the impression that I was. I'm an economist. I just happen to know how BGP works and have been doing this for most of my career. And there's one thing you learn in economics, which actually applies really well to network design. And it's a really simple equation that I'll share with you for those of you that are economists, budding network engineers. Speed times distance equals cost. Sounds easy, right? Speed times distance equals cost, which means if you want to make something fast, and let's assume everything is going to stay fast because none of us want to sell slow internet speeds, then the longer you have to take something, the more it's going to cost you. Sounds a reasonable thing. So your comment about how something costs more in Istanbul than it does to connect outside of the country, while I understand what you're saying, the only possible answer for something like that is that there's broken regulation. Nothing else. And you're shaking your head, I'm shaking my head.
It is correct. I'm just saying, yeah, it is as it is. I can't.
That's nothing we can do anything about.
We can, but it will take time.
So let's keep the regulation bits out of this, because we can't change that here, right? As economists, budding network engineers. But it's an important concept to remember when you're building networks. So my question out of this is this: when you're choosing to build a network, why would you not want to economize on cost, like the gentleman that had left earlier on was going on all about the time, reducing cost, reducing cost, reducing cost. So if you're choosing to peer, why would you choose to peer in a destination that is thousands of kilometers away from you? Because that's how far Frankfurt is. I had to carry my laptop to get the geography right. Why would you choose to peer at a destination that's thousands of kilometers away from you, versus something that's more regional or closer, shorter distance, so to speak? That would be my first question. And I think that's probably mostly answered by someone from the TIC or someone who was involved in their project. So I've forgotten who was who.
Chris, if I got your question, you mean that why, I mean, when the network designers, engineers designing their networks, they're not syncing to economic things and connecting to the, the better, places for peering?
So let's assume you want to connect to Google, right? You can choose to connect to Google in City 1, which is 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers away from you. Or you can choose to connect to Google in City 2, which is probably, say, 1,000 kilometers away from you. At the end of the day, it's going to be a capacity thing. It's going to be how much bandwidth can I get to City 1 and how much bandwidth can I get to City 2. And of course, it's going to be how much bandwidth can the Google or whomever you're trying to connect to can get to City 1 and how much they can get to City 2. You can't try to answer their side of the question. So that's not something that you should be worried about. Rational people would be thinking that they'd want to minimize their costs. And if they want to minimize their costs, and by the way, increase performance, because it's a shorter distance, you probably want to go to the city that's closer to you, right? So when you're choosing to peer, why choose something that's, again, thousands of kilometers away, Frankfurt, versus something that's closer? I heard with interest that you're now going to Armenia, which to me would have been a natural, almost first decision. Why was it the other way around?
I think that we do not have lots of opportunities in Iran right now, because we have UAE-IX in Dubai. UCOM contains these cache, but ARMX does not contain them. So Armenia, IX don't have those cache. So our opportunities for TIC and Iran is only Sofia Connect, and being in the Sofia Tola house, and the second one is Frankfurt, to seeing lots of members to do peer with them. Because of that, if I got your question for why TIC choose Frankfurt and why did this positioning for doing peering is opportunities. And the second answer is that the culture of peering and culture of doing, peer with other members and do not give the traffic to IP transit providers is about 2 years that working out in TIC. And you were one of the trainers last year, trained TIC guys to how to do peer. So we must give time to this, and I think 1 or 2 years more to do the efficient peering in other, IXPs in region.
Just one correction, Vahan Hosepian from Armenia, also in RIPE NCC. ARMX has CDNs, it has Akamai, Google Cache, Facebook, and we have also servers provided by PCH. And we actively cooperate with our members that are all main telecom operators.
How much capacity of their caches right now?
It's about 10 gig.
But hold on a second. You're trying to answer, I'm sorry, I cut into you.
That's all.
You're trying to answer the question from a Google perspective, right? Your issue is, I want to peer. And even if I'm going to do 100 gigabits a second or 200 gigabits a second to Google, and I'm saying Google, it could be
but I have 200 gigabit per second to Facebook, for example. If I want to peer with Facebook, I need that capacity in that IX.
Okay, hold on a second. That could be Google, Facebook, Cloudflare. I'm using Google as a generic catch-all, so a CDN. If you tell the CDN in advance, hello, dear CDN, I would like to peer with you at this exchange point. I am estimating that the amount of traffic that we're going to change with you is going to be X thousand or X hundreds of thousands gigabits a second. The CDN will scale their networks because it's their business to do that. And I think that's something we forget. And I want to say this to the network engineers in the room. I think one of the things that we always take into account is how is the other network or how is the CDN going to scale to what we're going to provide? That's not your problem. Frankly, it's not your problem. Of course, if you just rock up at the internet exchange and say, hi, I want 200 gigabits a second ports and I'd like to peer with everybody, that's poor planning on your part.
But to be honest, I have emails from ARMX. I will show them to Vahan, that they told us that our capacity is not enough for, providing service to TIC, because our Facebook cache is only 20 gigabit per second. I have this email. I will show you.
Who has told it?
I don't remember. I have the emails.
Okay, so we can share it. And
sure.
The capacity in Armenia is quite huge. It is not that amount that we currently have a traffic exchange. Currently we have around up to 20 gigabit, But the capacity from Facebook, from Google, from AKMA, we have a large capacity. And it's not only our mix. In fact, we have a network of CDNs. And when we don't have enough capacity, we take it, for example, from UCOM, it can be Beeline that also have a huge capacity. It can be, now we're in Armenia, sorry. It can be RPNet, etc., etc. We have a lot of CDNs in the country placed. So it is quite enough. And coming to the issue of CDN providers, if they see that your capacity is not enough, they just give you another capacity. That's all.
Yeah, I understand you, Nishal. Don't worry, I got the point.
Exactly my point.
But you know, doing efficient peering need increasing the costs. Suppose that for having 200 gigabit per second transit over Türk Telekom International to Frankfurt is much easier having, for example, 110 gigabit per second in Armenia, because I know, of course, 10 gigabit per second is cheaper than 200 gigabit per second, but if you want to multiply that to 20, it would be cost more.
Sorry, so that I get you clearly, you're saying that there was a transmission problem getting sufficient capacity
Price.
to Armenia.
Price.
Price.
There is no transmission problem, because from Norduz border, TIC has a good connection to Armenia. But
and that's
that
the country that's next door, right? Sorry, my laptop is down now.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so there's broken regulation in Armenia.
No.
No?
Actually, in Armenia, regulation is very, let's say, free in terms of telecom, etc. And there is no problem with the regulation.
Now I'm confused. Because if you're at the border of a country that you control costs to, and you've got a short distance to go to get to Yerevan, right?
Yeah.
You've got a short distance to go to Yerevan, but you've got a long distance to go to Istanbul, right? How is that long distance cheaper than the short distance if the regulation is not the problem?
I don't know how it is cost to reach Turkey, to reach Istanbul.
I have more questions, by the way, if you want me to go to the next one.
But in case of Armenia, I don't think it is so expensive. It is normal and logical.
When you want to buy one cell phone from Apple, if you find somebody to provide you cell phone, if you want a 10, it would be cheaper than one, because they will give you discount.
But you're buying the same capacity.
Suppose that TIC wants to connect Istanbul. Istanbul has lots of members, so they need 10 gigabit per second. When they're getting 10 gigabit per second, it's cheaper than getting 10 gigabit per second in Armenia.
I would accept your answer if it was true that of the top 5 networks that TIC was changing traffic with, there was some obscure network that they were not able to get to anywhere else. So for example, if there was a network, my home ISP in South Africa, that you could get to in Frankfurt, that you could not get to in Armenia, that would be true. But the top 5 networks that you're changing traffic with, there's a very good chance that you're going to find them at just about any exchange that you go to. So whether it's Istanbul, whether it's Armenix, whether it's an exchange that's this way, somewhere in Mumbai, whether it's UAEIX, it doesn't matter. The reality is you're speaking to the top 5 or 6 folks that you're going to get anywhere, right? And that's why I said you're going to buy the same amount of capacity, so discounts don't apply. It should not apply.
First of all, I accept your concern and what you talked about, because for efficient peering, we must connect to the nearest one, not going to which one is we have long distance to, and TIC has started that. Right now, 120 gigabit per second. I think it's terminating in UCOM for Facebook and Cloudflare only. They have more traffic, but 120 gigabit per second for Facebook and Cloudflare. And the 200 gigabit per second is going to DKIX. And the reason is the TIC has not got the whole traffic of Facebook in UCOM, is the capacity of Facebook itself.
Did you tell
as you told me, it's not our
Did you tell this to Facebook?
It's none of our business. Yeah, we've told them, and they answered that it would take maybe 16 days to increase that.
60. Okay. Okay. My next question, if there's.
Yeah, you are only.
There's no one in line. My next question is, there was some interesting talk about people trying to build transit networks. For those of you that were at MENOG last year, or you heard the stream afterwards, there was a presentation from the guy from Oman who described this very large submarine fiber network that they were building. They were talking about going all the way from...
Nishal, why you are looking me? I'm Asiatic.
No,
look those guys.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember the names. They went from, I think it was Kuala Lumpur or Singapore, all the way up to Los Angeles. So this is Oman Telecom building this major network that's going all the way there. And I thought that was a really interesting project, and it sounds like what some of you are talking about here. The one thing that I thought was missing in the plan that the gentleman proposed, and I went to speak to him afterwards, was that in this grand design for this network that was literally going across the world, they had forgotten that there was this important thing in the middle called an internet exchange point. And, well, by the way, there was no biggish or centralized or hub. That's the word we've been using. And I'm hearing the same thing here. I'm hearing this talk about people saying we're building all of these networks, but nobody's saying we're making it easy to get to this exchange point that we are running. Now, Bulent is excused because he runs an exchange point. But, I mean, to the other telcos, why are you not seeing this? Is it some misunderstanding that I have? And I'm really curious now because I teach people about exchange points all across the world. And you're doing this and you're saying money. Well, making parts available to your exchange point is a good thing because it's foreign exchange that's flowing into your country. That's a reduction on your balance of payments. And now I'm going to start talking economics, so I'm going to shut up. I'll ask my question very simply. Why is nobody talking about liberalizing the exchanges that they have, making it easy for foreigners to get to the exchange? Why are we talking instead about building capacity to Europe, connecting Southeast Asia to Europe?
We are not the problem, the foreigners are the problem.
Because
they're not coming.
Because all we're doing by moving traffic from this end of the world to that end of the world is reinforcing this idea that the center of the internet is anywhere but where we are. And that's not true.
You must ask this question from Google, Facebook, and others,
Well,
because they're not coming.
So I can answer that bit, and I can tell you this. I live in South Africa. For those of you that do not know, that is at the bottom of Africa. We're disconnected from the rest of the world. Pick a network. Google, Akamai, Cloudflare, Amazon, all of those CDNs, all the names you can throw around. It took them a long time, but they finally made their way down to my third world country. Okay, so it's not that the CDNs are not building out there. The CDNs know their business better than we know their business.
Why you think that we are not trying?
The CDNs know their business better than we know their business. They know that they need to get to the users. And I think it seems to me that what the telcos are doing is that they're trying to maximize end-to-end profit. They're doing to use the term transit profit.
Can I say something?
Seem to grow the internet.
Because I think you spoke about this during MENOG 2016.
Probably.
Which we hosted in Istanbul. And you did a fantastic story about this because you're an economist. You already mentioned this. Why do you allow the money to go out of the country instead of the money coming into the country? When you establish an exchange, you will have that. But, I mean, look at the operators. Some of the operators still, I mean, they have their business plans, and their business plans maybe are made for 5 or 10 years, right? So they calculated on the fact that they didn't want to see any foreign operators coming into the country. They will go over there, they've invested, they made the investments, the capacity investments to go to a certain point, collect the traffic from there, get it back to their country, and they be the only point of collection. So they will be the only one selling that transit, right? So what you're referring to is just business logics. I understand that, but regulations and business plans of certain countries and companies don't work like that. They have planned ahead, and they are going to do that as long as it is possible until somebody says, guys, this doesn't make sense. You have to change your plans. And I'm going to be very open. When I started in setting up this exchange in Istanbul, I also went to the incumbent operator, to some other operators, and said, you know, we are not there to threaten your business. We're not a threat for you. We're just there to make it more easy for you, because we will make sure that money comes into the country, because when we get content in here, it means that money will get into the country. But they're not interested because they have their other plans. And I told them, listen, your business plan that you have made for 5 or 10 years, is based on selling IP transit, and we know that the prices for transit are decreasing. It will not come to this 0 point, but it's decreasing, right? But when I was working for Telia in the Netherlands, I remember that I was selling 1 megabit for 20 euros per meg. 20 euros. And today, you can buy 20 euro cent if you were a good negotiator or you would find the right network, right? Maybe 30 euro cent per meg. These are the tariffs that are available. What we're trying to say is, we're not a threat. We're there to set up an ecosystem, getting content into the country, making it possible that data centers grow, that they can expand, that we have more data centers, they can sell their power and co-location, etc. People come into those data centers, so you create an ecosystem. You have a platform where you can connect to all of the players by just connecting to one platform. This is the whole idea about interconnection. But like I said before, some operators, or maybe some countries where you have different regulations, look at the UAE. They still have a very high IP transit pricing in the country. Or if you want to do transit, it's expensive. The pricing is very expensive. It's all controlled. It will take some time, but eventually all of them will realize that there is nowhere else to go, and they will change their business plans. They will change it in such a way that it serves the ecosystem and not their only own benefit.
Maybe that's the question we should ask the telco folk that are here. Yeah. What are your plans to change? Because my question's still there. Why are you not making it easier to get people into your exchange? By the way, you're still selling transmission for them to get there.
Okay, I think answer of your question is in your question. What I mean, let's imagine that in all countries we have data centers. In this case, transit business will die. Are you agree? Because all countries will have their own data centers in it, and no one will need to get traffic outside of the country. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, and one of the points that some providers, some operators transit will try to not allow to have data centers everywhere, because it is a huge business. And most of them are afraid that in case of disruption of this business, what will be the next step and how will be they getting their revenues after that. So I think, of course, in one point of time it can happen, but not very soon. Because
I think you will have to allow these operators to be in your country. You can still sell your IP transit, but you will sell it from your own country, not from outside.
Yeah, but to whom you would say?
You would sell it. I mean, these operators want to come into your country. You have your eyeball network, so they want to access that. That's in your power. That's in your control.
Let's assume that we have exchange in Armenia, in Turkey, in Iran, in Georgia. So in this case, what is the need of, let's say, Georgian provider operator to come to get anything from Turkey or Armenia, while all content providers have their CDNs inside Georgia? So in this case, there will not be need to go outside country to get anything. So in this case, transit business will die. Are you agree with me?
It will decrease. It will not.
It will almost die. It will decrease, like if we look today to the content like Google, Facebook, etc., which are in each country almost 90-95%. In this case, transit business will bring peanuts. So this is another side of the coin. So that is why it is still question what will be better, to have data centers in each country or try to have the best cost and the quality and the continuity of the business model.
Well, as I said before, I think there should be a balance. I mean, you can't do without transit. You have to have transit, but it has to be balanced. Now, we in some countries the transit is very high and there is no peering at all. So that's why I said you should have a balance of it. You have to have both in order to have a good network.
I agree that it should be balanced, but it couldn't be that everywhere we will have data centers and then the Transnet business will not work. So because people, providers have invested a lot in these cables, submarines, etc., and they invested in it with a long-term plan to get money, not in 3 or 5 years, but in a long-term period. So it is quite a difficult question. Which decision is better?
Back to you.
What you're looking for?
Well, I was actually waiting to see if anyone else had an explanation on how they're liberalizing their exchange point. No.
Suppose that we are providing free transit for content providers. Would you please persuade them, convince them to come to Iran?
We can talk.
And
I can happily put you in contact with the people I know. But there's just two things I want to say, and then I promise I'll leave. The first is, if you don't make the cables cost effective, and if you plan on a cost-effective scheme that's going to take you 30 years or 40 years to make the cable, consider who your competition is. Because the people that are putting new cables in the water, the people that are laying new cables these days are not telcos, okay? It's the CDNs, because the CDNs have the content. They know they have the content. They know that they're going to get to the users, and they're just rolling out their own infrastructure. So to potential infrastructure builders, if you're planning on a 30-year ROI on something, or 5-year ROI on something that has a lifespan of 30 years, understand who your competition is and understand that they know how to price their infrastructure. And the second thing is it was a cool phrase I heard last week. I was at the MENOG meeting, and they were talking about similar kinds of things, and a comment came up when they were talking about liberalizing their economies and making things better for all, and the phrase was, "A rising tide lifts all boats." I had never heard that before, and it sounded cute because I was in the Caribbean. And that's something I urge you to consider, that in making your environment easier for folks to do business in creating that tide that's going up, you are going to increase your profits overall. And if you want, I can help you with the math with that a little later. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishal. Anybody else question?
So, Nishal, at a certain moment I was hoping that you get invited to sit up there. Ripen CC, Christian Teuschel, thank you for the discussion. I think it's very fruitful. There's just one point that I would like to address, and I was a bit missing. So we heard about the creation of local caches. So more content provider get the data closer to the user. That is, of course, a downside for the transit provider. We know that. What I would be interested in to hear your opinion on net neutrality, because if we get more content to the user, transit might not be necessary anymore, and then the service quality of transits might go down. Well, I mean, that's a kind of economic fact. Yeah, what do you think about that? What is your stand towards net neutrality? Do you see that as a threat for content that's not being delivered via CDNs?
I think we are speaking about static content, and in this case it will be right. But when we speak about dynamic content, Skype or Periscope or another services, transit will never die, and it will live long time, and it will grow because we have 4K, HD, and other high quality and growth of quality, and transit will every time. I think it's about 30–40%, not less. Okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah, true. I mean, if it's a dynamic content, then I would assume that there is money to make because there's a business model behind that. And then they might solve it in other ways, but I'm more related to Wikipedia, for example. I mean, Wikipedia might not be able to afford to be distributed via a CDN, and then it would be interesting to see how that pans out in the future. No?
It's a very difficult discussion.
It is, yeah. Well, we still have till 4, right?
I think transit channels will live through dynamic content, and through these transit channels, we'll deliver all static content. And it's both things together. It can't be one died and one will be live. It will be whole thing.
Yeah, I can bring like example from another sphere of telco. We all know that voice services are decreasing a lot compared to the previous years. Year on year, we have a decrease because some part of this traffic cannibalized with Viber, Skype, WhatsApp, etc. It didn't die. For sure, it will not die during long term. But we can see that this traffic is decreasing and decreasing. The same will happen with IP traffic. So, and then what we have on the voice side, a lot of voice companies, wholesalers, etc., leave the business because there are not any more revenue for which you need to work, etc. So in case of your scenario, when all these caches will be in place and near, we will have like, I think, 10 or 15% of total traffic, which is dynamic. And in this case, transit for sure will be decreased a lot. Of course, service quality for the static IPs will be very high because it is very close to the end users. I mean, mass market, etc. But in this case, it is still question because today we have less and less margin on internet, on other services. Telco business from high margin business become like middle or low margin business. So it is still question business will grow or not in case of such scenario.
So actually, this is something that a carrier or an operator should answer because they will be directly impacted by that, right? So, and I know that's why I said I think this is a very difficult discussion because it has already started a long time ago in the US, what to do with net neutrality. Then it came over to Europe. I'm not sure if there is already a decision made in the US. What I do know is that in Europe it's still banned. It's net neutrality is like, don't come near, things like that. In this region, I don't know. This is the first time I hear the discussion about net neutrality in this region, so it's very new. I think we have other things to discuss before, because we have, like I said, we have infrastructure problems. We have the high cost of infrastructure in the country. I just told you that I have a big challenge in my own country to get people connected to the exchange. The reason that they buy IP transit is that's because the easiest way. You can just buy IP transit from an operator instead of going to an exchange where you have to pay for the local tail, then connect to the exchange platform and have access to all the other operators where you might be able to peer. If that would be cheap, then everybody would be there. But it's not. But it will be, because people start to understand that it's necessary. It should be there. You cannot rely and depend on one player only, your only operator. What happens if he crashes? The loop is gone, whatever. You don't have access. Life stops. internet is a commodity. I mean, we can't do anything without internet anymore. So that's why I say it's a very difficult discussion. I don't know where we are with that in this region, but I do know that we have a lot of other things that we should first solve, and then because then we can see what is happening in Europe. Because I was talking about talking to somebody today, the internet or the regulation or whatever you look. If you look in Europe, it's like a sports car. You just get in, start it, and you can drive 200 kilometers an hour, right? But here, it's like a locomotive. It's just getting started slowly, and it has to get up to speed, and we are not there yet. It takes time. I would love to see things happening in my own country very quickly, but when you talk to the ministry or you talk to the regulator, it's like, yeah, we're thinking about that. In my country, they're even thinking about a national IXP. Like, we have to get our own content here. I'm saying, okay, try to invent the wheel again, or to try to discover America again. I'm here, why don't you use me? And they're like, no, we want our own. Okay, build your own. Have good luck with that. What can I say? So we're seeing this kind of things happening.
All right, cool, thank you. I think it's always good to be prepared, but I'm going to present a question maybe in another few years. Okay?
Sure,
thank you.
Well, just mention a few points about the neutrality. When we're talking about the neutrality, net neutrality, we should also consider the issue of IXP neutrality, because it is one of the the biggest issues also. And if we see the practice, many of IXPs are neutral. They are not belonging to companies. They are acting like the association, and they have the common decision-making procedures, etc., not to be in a problem with other members. In some cases it is good, in some cases it is bad. But this neutrality issue of IXP is very, very important. And maybe that is one of the issues that Turkish government raised for you. But of course they can also use your capacities. I can come to another question.
Before you go on, I would just like to point out something.
Okay.
We are not against any other IXP in the country. We are even saying, yes, please, build one. I can even tell you that NetIX, which is in Sofia, or Sofia Connect, are connected to us. So we're open. We're not like, you cannot come to our exchange. We just encourage them to come to our exchange. We're not afraid. It's like, we're there to improve the internet quality, the internet experience. Because what we see in Turkey, I mean, you can also see it here. We talked about latencies, etc. I lived in Europe for 41 years, so I can make a clear comparison. When I was in the Netherlands, internet was fast because content is near. You just go onto the internet, you Google something, you download something, it's fast. In Turkey, because people don't know about the difference, it all looks okay. But if I look in Facebook or you want to upload something, it takes a while. If you download a video or you're watching something on YouTube, you can get this this sign that it's uploading or loading, or it just breaks up in the middle and you have to wait a bit. These are things that are very common. It happens. And people are used to that, so it's normal. And I face that here as well. I'm trying to send an email. It takes a while before it's gone. It has to connect somewhere. Maybe it's going to a lot of servers. I don't know. But these are the things that we see. So we don't have a problem with getting other IXPs connecting to us. No problem.
So the question is about complex vision of telecommunication infrastructure and transit development in these regions. So it can be connected to Turkey, it can be connected to Armenia, Georgia, it can be connected to northern part, I mean Kazakhstan, etc. It can go also to Pakistan. But we should understand, we should be ready for these drastic changes in the traffic development. We will have more and more traffic. If you remember, even 1 year ago, Facebook was not developing so much traffic. Now it is developing. Now it is producing so much traffic. Other services, other local content will be developed more and more. And we shouldn't forget also about the IoT, to what it can bring, etc. So my question is, are you ready, guys, you people from Turkey, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, other countries, are you ready for these changes? Do you have a vision how to interconnect these regions, Central Asia to Middle East, to Caucasus, to Europe, to Pakistan, etc.? Do you think that commercial companies should think about that, or state should have a vision on that and talk to commercial companies how to develop that? What do you think? Thank you.
I will ask for this question in my presentation. I can ask.
Yeah, okay.
I think
later.
you would like to know all secrets, right?
Sure, thank you.
And the plans. Actually, I think all main players in market in this region are thinking about this and looking and checking the risks of such scenario. It is clear for everyone that with our partnership between each other, this will not happen. And for doing such thing, all these providers and countries should work together and have the same understanding of the business and the steps. What I mean under this, for example, let's say in one country you have very open regulation which is not doing the things which will block the business, normal business continuity. But from country to country, regulation is very different, which is really making some problems, some issues, which in their case, which makes the process very, very, very difficult. So in this case, I think in one point of time, all these companies, all these providers will come to the same agreement, to the same understanding, have the common agreement between each other, and make and do this project. I mean, realize all this transit and bring all this traffic from, let's say, Middle East, Middle Asia to Armenia, or from Armenia to Iraq, etc. But this project can be realized only when all main players will be on the same side and will have the same understanding of the situation. Without that, I can't imagine that it will happen.
Okay, please.
I would like at some point, I think it is necessary, it's important, it is necessary to establish a regional IXP in this area due to some new emerging application that with low latency requirement and quality of experience, good quality of experience requirements. From TIC side, we are ready to cooperate with our neighbors to establish a regional IXP in the region.
I think we are out of time. 5 minutes, you can do your presentation. After that, we have break. Yeah, please. Would you please? Okay, thank you.
First of all, I'm very glad to participate in this seminar and forum, and a little bit about my country. Kyrgyz Republic is a small country, about 6 million population, and it's an extremely mountainously country, and it's it's in the Central Asia, between China, Uzbekistan, between China and Iran. Okay. Digital Casa is a, okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Nurbek Abaskanov. I'm ex-chairman of State Committee of Kyrgyz Republic of ICT development. Digital Casa is a Kyrgyz Republic 5-year project which goal is to support the government of the Kyrgyz Republic in the realization of the National Digital Transformation Program, TAZACOM. The project is financed by the International Development Association, World Bank. The total cost of the project is $50 million. This amount is subject to a 50-50 split between IDA grant and IDA credit. This project has both regional and national aspects and is divided into 4 logical components. Speaking about Iran and China, here's a slide about our opportunity and our big challenge. We want to be part of this new road, and this project fully coincides with China's national initiative, One Belt, One Road. There's using part, central part of road. The national aspect is connected with the development of digital infrastructure, state electronic services, cloud storage through the creation of favorable conditions at the legislative and educational levels. The regional dimension is a cross-border approach to improving the capacity of internet access in Central Asia and some landlocked countries in South Asia. CASA means Central Asia, South Asia. There are 4 components. First component is regional digital connectivity infrastructure. There's budget is $21 million. This component will support targeted public sector financing aimed at catalyzing private sector investments in the deployment of additional domestic and regional digital connectivity infrastructure and creating a more competitive environment in the sector, while also providing connectivity services for the government's own internal use. Expected results: more than 1,000 kilometers of fiber optic lines will be laid throughout the country. At least 134 government agencies will be connected to the GNet. At least 60% of the country's population has access to the internet. Regional hypothesis is a transboundary approach to improving the capacity of networks by laying 1,000 kilometers of fiber optic lines to provide access to internet in countries of Central Asia and some landlocked countries of South Asia. Second component is regional data centers, digital platforms, and smart solutions. Budget is 18 million. This component will focus on establishing solid technology foundation for the digital economy and digital government, including regional integrated shared data center infrastructure and digital platforms that can be reused at regional and national levels. This component will focus on attracting private investment towards the creation of privately owned and operate Eurasia Cloud, a green regional data center network. It will also provide limited support for creating a mini government cloud, G-Cloud. The vision is to help position the Kyrgyz Republic as a digital hub of Central Asia, to take advantage of its central location, relatively cheap energy sources, climate conducive for establishing green data centers, improved connectivity, and strong political will. In our country, we have 2 tariffs for electricity. For population, is for 1 kilowatt is 1 cent. For business, it's 3 cents per kilowatt. And it's cheapest prices in CIS countries. Cheaper was in Turkmenistan, but now there was free, but now it's more expensive. Third component, enabling environment for digital economy. Budget is 8.5 million. This component is designed to strengthen and harmonize at the regional and national levels the laws, regulations, institutional and human capacity, and develop a variety of partnerships that will be needed to take full advantage of the rapidly evolving digital technologies, infrastructure and platforms. Improve market competitiveness, incentivize innovation and job creation. It will also support digital leadership skills and capacity development, as well as strategic communications. Component 4 is project management. The budget is $2.5 million. This component will finance project management activities and associated institutional capacity building. And here are main indicators of the project. We want to reach 60% of internet penetration and other indicators. Let's see, this project completely coincides with China One Belt, One Road initiatives. Currently, 100% of the internet delivered to Central Asia countries comes through territory of Kazakhstan. And such dependence from one country possesses huge risks. Therefore, we are very much interested in diversifying of internet supply sources. As options, we see China and Iran. Besides being centrally located between China, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, allow us to act as a trigger in process of implementation of the Digital Silk Road project, starting from China to Iran and further to Europe. I believe that this road will be the best for ping-sensitive data traffic. As the next stage, there arises a great opportunity to develop data centers in the Kyrgyz Republic. Due to availability of very cheap and green hydroelectric power, existence of plenty of sites with cold climate, making possible the development of data storage, mining, and co-location. I would like to repeat that this project acts as trigger and brings great advantage for the whole region. That's all. As you see, this road is more shorter than the ocean road or the road through the north. And it's a big challenge for us to be part of this project and to increase traffic through our countries between China to Europe. Thank you for attention.
Yeah, it was geography inside IXP. Thank you, Nurbek. Is there any other question? Okay, thank you for attending this panel. I think we have a break for 30 minutes. Thank you.